Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to Season 2 of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kayla Smith, CEO of the Hormone P.U.Z.L.E Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching, creator of the Hormone P.U.Z.L.E method, an infertility warrior, two-time boy mom, and women's health expert. This podcast is for women struggling with infertility, painful periods, terrible PMS, or really just any symptom of hormone imbalance that they are ready to eliminate for good. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the fields of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get pregnant and eliminate those pesky symptoms for good. Are you ready? This season is packed with even more expert guests sharing groundbreaking knowledge, giving you that jolt of energy that you so desperately need, sending you lots of virtual hugs, and inspiring you to take your fertility into your own hands and make that baby. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now let's get started on your road to transformation. I am so excited about today's guest, Maya Rose. She is a nutritionist who helps celiac and gluten-sensitive women stop getting glutened and start healing their gut. As a fellow celiac who struggled with digestive issues for many years, she treats clients with the empathy and specialized care she wishes she had received. She takes a joy-based, non-dogmatic approach to nutrition and hopes to show others how nourishing and fulfilling a gluten-free life can be. On the show, we go into depth about how to really know if you have a gluten sensitivity or celiac disease, how that affects your hormones and fertility, and some easy practical tips that you can start doing today to get on the road to healing your gut, boosting your fertility, and living gluten-free. Now, without further ado, I would love to welcome Maya to the show. Hey, Maya. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kayla. I'm so excited about this conversation today.
Too, yes. So I would love to hear just a little more about you. How did you start working in women's health and, working with gluten and celiac and all of that?
Yeah, so for me, it all started out with my first job out of undergrad. I was working at this kind of food as medicine culinary school, and it was a really impactful experience because it showed how powerful food can be, especially in light of chronic conditions. And so that sparked my interest in nutrition. And at the same time, I also started having digestive issues of my own. And I started going to doctors, started trying to find answers, and just continuously got told that I had IBS. And that was because it looked like IBS, but no one was really doing any detective work to go further. And eventually, over the years, my symptoms branched out into other things. So I started having joint pain, brain fog, hair loss. I had a bunch of weight loss unintentionally to the point where I actually lost my period for many years.
Wow.
And so after, all those years of struggling, feeling really stuck, I finally got into my master's in nutrition program, and it was right in the middle of that where I got my celiac diagnosis. And that was a pivotal moment because in some ways it was almost relieving to know what had been going on for years and to finally be able to move forward from that and heal. And that was also the moment where I became so passionate about getting people the support that I was looking for so long. And so I'm really grateful to be in a position now where in my practice, I can do that for people. And I'm really, really happy to be here today and be talking about, that intersection of gluten-related disorders, and women's health and hormones, because that's something that is very real and not talked about enough, in my opinion.
Exactly. I agree. And I love that story. I find so many of us, that's how we get into this field, is because our own personal struggles and journeys and being frustrated with not getting the answers that we wanted. So I love that story.
Definitely.
I'm so glad you finally figured out what was going on, because I know how frustrating that could be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's great to be able to have the empathy now in working with people going through a similar experience.
For sure. Well, talk to us a little bit more about, we hear gluten sensitivity, we hear celiac disease. So what is the difference in those two?
Yeah, great place to start. And by the way, for those who don't know what gluten is a protein in wheat, barley, and rye. And so let's start off with celiac disease. Celiac is an autoimmune disease, meaning that your body kind of goes rogue and starts attacking itself. And gluten is the trigger for that. And in celiac, specifically, the body attacks the small intestine. And we'll talk about that a little bit more coming up, but the greatest implication of that is it causes a lot of nutrient malabsorption. So that's a big deal for celiac. It's also a genetic disease, meaning there are 2 genes that can predispose someone to developing celiac. Doesn't mean that you'll automatically get it. It just means that it gives you the possibility to get it in your lifetime. And it also means that if you have celiac, it's very important to let your relatives know and, put it on their radar to monitor and to screen, even if they aren't having symptoms. And then if we look at non-celiac gluten sensitivity, this is a food sensitivity. So in food sensitivities, our immune system is activated, but it's not attacking our own tissue as in an autoimmune disease. And with gluten sensitivity, we don't see the same damage to the small intestine. So if we did a scope in there, we wouldn't see that severe change that we would in celiac. And it's not genetic that we know of at this point. And so when we're looking at these two, it's really important to know what we're working with here, because they operate very differently in the body. And so, yeah, it's important to draw that distinction. However, these 2 conditions affect people in very similar ways. And that's because the symptoms are very much shared between the 2. So with both of these conditions, you can have digestive issues ranging from constipation, abdominal pain, bloating, gas, diarrhea. And then you can also have these system-wide symptoms. That's a tongue twister. Right. So you can get anything from joint pain, severe fatigue, headaches, migraines, mood imbalances, cognition issues, even numbness in your extremities. The list really goes on and on. There's hundreds of symptoms shared by these 2.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times that gluten sensitivity gets a little bit downplayed or is considered maybe a lot less serious because it's not autoimmune, but it has very serious health consequences, and it's impacting people on a day-to-day basis in a similar way as celiac. So I think it's important to show respect for both of these.
For sure. And how common are both of these? Because I find in my practice that gluten sensitivity is very common. Most of my clients have some form of gluten sensitivity. Maybe not celiac, but some form of sensitivity. So talk to us about that. How common is it to be diagnosed with celiac or gluten sensitivity?
Yeah, so both of these are extremely undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. So celiac affects about 1% of the population. However, about 80% of people do not currently know that they have celiac.
Wow.
That's how, yeah. That's how underdiagnosed it is. And non-celiac gluten sensitivity affects more of the population. It affects about 6%. I've heard estimates though going as high as about 13%.
Wow.
So I think the takeaway here is that these are still kind of blind spots sometimes in the conventional medical care system. And so I'm really glad, Kayla, that you are taking a deeper look at these, and I'm sure you're kind of uncovering a lot of these issues that maybe people hadn't talked about before or noticed before.
For sure. And I find that a lot in my practice. I recommend that everybody get off of gluten. I think it's highly processed and you just don't need it. There's so many foods that you can eat that don't have gluten in them. It's like, let's just get off of that. And sometimes that's the missing link. I have clients that come to me trying to get pregnant for years. They remove gluten from their diets and all of a sudden they're pregnant. And it's like,
wow.
So it's really important that we are looking at this because it affects, like you said, it affects a lot of people and a lot of people don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm. And what an incredible change you can make. Just by eliminating this thing from your diet, you can change your fertility. That's so amazing.
For sure. And do you find too that it's people have a response and a gluten sensitivity, whether it is like a processed package with gluten in it versus like a whole grain, like say they're eating Ezekiel bread or something that's a sprouted whole grain. It does have gluten, but would you see the same effects from both of those products?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's, I see it as the gluten protein as really being the issue, regardless of what state it is in.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. And so let's talk a little more about how this will affect our fertility and hormones. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yes. So these two conditions can impact women's health in many, many ways. For celiac women in particular, they actually have a 4-time higher risk of having a pregnancy complication than non-celiac women. And for non-pregnant women, celiac has also been associated with things like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS, and amenorrhea, which is loss of a period. And, there are fewer studies at this point on the direct link of gluten sensitivity in women's health, but what we see so far suggests that it has very, very similar implications as celiac. And I'm sure you're seeing this clinically as well.
And just to pause for just 1 second is I always look at it as who's paying for these studies? That's why there's probably not a study. So we've seen practical use where gluten is affecting you and you're throwing all of these symptoms. So let's just remove it. Let's not wait for a study to tell us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And unfortunately, when it comes to women's health, I find that sometimes the research is pretty behind.
Yes.
Too. Yeah. The good news is that when I mention these complications and these risks, that's really in the context of an unmanaged or unaddressed gluten sensitivity or celiac. When we take out the gluten, we can really resolve these issues. So I hope everyone takes that to heart.
Yes, I love that. And so let's talk about, and so would that be your recommendation on how to kind of avoid some of these complications, how to avoid, some getting gluten, being affected by gluten sensitivity or even having celiac is just removing the gluten? Is it that simple?
Yeah, I do recommend that people get tested for celiac before they remove the gluten, because it's harder to get an accurate celiac test. And it's more likely you'll get a false negative if you've already taken it out. So I recommend get tested for celiac first. You can do a blood test to check for that. And then if you rule that out, then very much consider gluten sensitivity. And I think a really important thing to note about this is with these two conditions, I think a lot of times we associate them just with digestive symptoms, but you can have other things going on and not have any issues with your bowel movements. And for a lot of people, infertility may be the only symptom that you have of either celiac or gluten sensitivity. So that might be your marker. And I love that you have noticed this and are working with this and are helping so many people address this. That's awesome.
I love that you said that, because that is such a key point. Sometimes you don't know, and that might be your only symptom is your infertility. And that's why removing gluten, I see these ladies all of a sudden they're getting pregnant, because that was what was causing the problem. So you're saying we can just go to our doctors, get a really simple blood test, and that will tell us if we have celiac. And then what about sensitivity? Would that just be if we're throwing any symptoms, we need to really remove gluten?
Yeah, so the best way to test for non-celiac gluten sensitivity is to do an elimination and then re-challenge of that. However, if you're trying to get pregnant, that's going to be, you can look at your time trying to get pregnant as the elimination challenge, because again, if infertility is your only symptom, you want to be measuring that more, if that makes sense.
Yes, for sure. And that's where I start all of my clients. We do a reset. We remove any food that causes inflammation, which gluten is one of those things. And then we reintroduce, but I always say, like, if you're struggling with fertility, let's leave the gluten out until we can get pregnant and then see, if you have a sensitivity or not. But again, 100%. It's so easy to eat things that don't have gluten in them. Like, why are we eating this in the first place? So
absolutely. Yeah, there's a whole big world of food out there.
For sure. So let's talk a few tips before we take a break. Somebody is deciding, maybe they're having symptoms, maybe they're having a lot of symptoms, maybe they're just having some infertility issues. What are some things that we can do to easily start to go gluten-free?
Yeah, so really, there are some foundational elements that I think are really important to get a hold of. So getting really savvy about label reading, that's number one. And finding out places where gluten is commonly found and where gluten can hide. And so we have to recognize that gluten goes beyond food. It's in things like personal care products and medications and supplements, in envelope glue, really weird places.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we have to do a really comprehensive audit of our whole life and make sure that we get the gluten out. And definitely for people with celiac and even quite a few people with gluten sensitivity, it's also important to take into account cross-contamination. And so that's where, for example, if I have a cutting board at home and someone makes a wheat bread sandwich on it, that cutting board is no longer safe for me. And with gluten sensitivity, there is sometimes a little bit more nuance to that. It's really individual, and it takes figuring that out a little bit more. But certainly with celiac, cross-contamination is a big deal.
Yes. Great points. Definitely. That's another big thing that I talk about a lot. Let's read labels. Let's first construct our plate with food that does not come with a label, that's whole food. But then if you have to have something with a label or a package, let's read that to make sure it's safe. And I love that you mentioned too, that it's not just food, it's non-food products. Let's look at our beauty products. Let's look at our, our lotions and our envelopes.
Yes.
So definitely taking a hard look at all of that stuff.
Yeah. And another thing I see people run into is where we know that gluten is a protein in wheat, barley, and rye, but there are so many different names for these things, especially wheat. There are so many different names for wheat. There are things like spelt, kamut, bulgur, couscous, einkorn. And so a lot of times you'll see products that say ancient grains, and it will just have other varieties of wheat that don't go by the name wheat.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So really, we need a list of these things that we need to be looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Got it. Sounds like I need to make a new freebie. I love it.
I do have a 10 hidden sources of gluten guide that I'd be happy to share with your audience.
That would be awesome. We'll put that in the show notes on how to get that, and we'll talk about that in the second half too. Awesome. Well, cool. Was there any other tips that you want to share on, just prepping to go gluten-free?
Yeah, this is something I see a lot where I just encourage people to monitor their relationship with food. And this happens whenever you take something out of your diet, but especially with gluten, I see a lot of people going into online forums and getting some information there. And I think those are great places for camaraderie and peer support, can be really helpful for that. But I do think there's sometimes a lot of misinformation there and a lot of people recommending to eliminate even more foods than are necessary. And that can create a lot of fear around food. And so I would just say, if you go into those forums and you leave feeling more freaked out about food than when you went in there, it might be time to look for information and support elsewhere.
Yes, I completely agree. And the same thing happens in the fertility community.
Oh, I bet.
I'm like, no, that is not true. Yes. So it's super frustrating. So I love that you said that. Awesome. Well, we're going to take a short break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors. We're going to come back and we're going to dive into more practical tips around going gluten-free. And we're going to dive into some specifics around certain foods that we can eat that aren't, that don't have gluten, to kind of give our audience some ideas on how they can start to go gluten-free. So we'll be right back. Hey y'all, it's Coach Kayla here. I hope you are loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Hormone P.U.Z.L.E Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching. Whether you're struggling to get pregnant with pesky hormone symptoms, or you're working to build a career in the fertility and women's health space, we have you covered. Visit our website at www.coachkayla.com to learn more on how we can help you. Text the keyword fertility to 615-257-8855 for your free fertility meal plan. Text the keyword hormone to 615-257-8855 for your free cycles thinking quick start guide. Text the keyword fertility coach to 615-257-8855 to get a copy of our course catalog and to learn more on how you can become a certified fertility coach or add fertility coaching to an already existing wellness practice. Text the keyword club to 615-257-8855 to learn more about joining our Hormone P.U.Z.L.E membership club. Welcome back, Maya.
Thank you.
I am super excited to talk more practical tips. So let's dive into that. What would somebody's typical day look like of eating if they're gluten-free?
Yeah, so I will preface this by saying I really believe the best gluten-free diet is one that's personalized to the individual. So we all have our own biochemistry and different needs, and these may change throughout our life. So I think it's really important to stay open and receptive to those. But that being said, I think there are some really general helpful principles that we can go by here. And the first would be focusing on whole nutrient-dense foods. And that is so crucial for anyone who's had any digestive issue or has been struggling to absorb nutrients. Like, we need all the nutrition we can get. And so that would mean really focusing on things that don't have labels on them, which also makes your life a lot easier because you don't have to read those. Yeah. But, staying to kind of the perimeters of the grocery store, really emphasizing the fruits and vegetables and colorful foods in your diet, nuts and seeds, those healthy fats, healthy oils like extra virgin olive oil. That's one that I really recommend. And focusing on whole sources of protein, whether that be for you meat, fish, poultry, seafood, beans, quinoa, other whole grains if that works for you. And so I think that's really key. The more you can eat things without labels, the easier life will be and the more nutrient dense they will be.
For sure. And that's not just important for our overall health, but it's important, especially when you're trying to get pregnant or if you're having any hormonal issues. Eating whole food balance.
Definitely.
Is so important. Yes.
Definitely. Across the board.
Yes. We dive a little deeper. I think a lot of people get confused around grains because they think grains have gluten. So can we dive into that a little bit? What are some grains that do not have gluten that are safe?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So gluten-free grains include things like rice, and I encourage people to eat many different varieties of rice. So there's like black forbidden rice, there's short grain rice, there's red rice, there's all kinds, and that helps to increase the diversity of your diet, which is another key thing when you're working on anything really, but especially any gut-related issue. So there's rice, there's millet. That's an ancient grain. It's a really tiny little grain, and you can actually cook it with a lot of water where it gets to kind of grits consistency. Okay. It gets to be really creamy and delicious. Throw some ghee in there. So good.
That sounds delicious.
It's so good. Let's see here. There's also quinoa. I love quinoa because it's actually relatively high in protein, and it's a complete protein. So that's a great one. It's one that I eat a lot. And there's also things like teff. That's another small little grain. If you've ever had Ethiopian food and you've had the bread, that's made out of teff.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's a really interesting one. And buckwheat, despite its name, it's actually a seed and it's gluten-free. Okay. And that one's also very high in fiber, iron, and protein.
I love it. Oh, sounds wonderful. So there's lots of variety of grains. That's awesome.
Yes.
Love it.
And another thing I encourage just in general is to try to work towards as broad a diet as possible. Because, time and time again, we're seeing that a diverse diet can lead to a diverse gut microbiome. Yeah. And diversity in our gut is one of the best markers of gut health that we have at this point.
I love that. Yes. And I've been hearing this from a lot of different practitioners, and that's what we do here is I make sure that my clients are eating, diverse foods we go through their cycle and we have them kind of eat for their cycle. So that's perfect. I love that.
That is so cool. Yes.
Awesome. So let's talk supplements and herbs. Are there any that you recommend? And obviously before we talk about this, anybody listening, don't ever add a supplement or herb before you check with your doctor or healthcare practitioner. But I just want to kind of overview, are there any of your favorites that you recommend to your clients?
Yeah. So it depends on where someone is at in their healing journey and if they have any other conditions or nutrient deficiencies. But in general, I use quite a few different anti-inflammatory supplements and herbs. And the two things that I use in almost every case are a good probiotic and a good digestive enzyme. And yes, these are so helpful. And that's because, in the case of a probiotic, with both of these conditions, with gluten sensitivity and celiac, we see very dramatic disruptions occurring in the gut microbiome. And so a probiotic can be a very useful tool in kind of rebalancing the ecosystem there. And it does sometimes take a little bit of tailoring to find the probiotic that works for the individual, but overall, I see these as having a really positive impact. And the digestive enzyme comes in handy because for both of these conditions, there's a lot of inflammation going on in the gut. And in the case of celiac, we have frank damage happening to the small intestine. And both of those things really interfere with our enzyme production. And enzymes are absolutely critical in breaking down our food and helping us access those really valuable nutrients. And so definitely for the population I work with and for so many others, actually, we need a big boost when it comes to enzymes. So that can really help. And sometimes, when someone's ready, I'll move them from digestive enzymes to a good bitter. And bitters help us stimulate the production of our own digestive secretions.
Gotcha. And how would we know that we needed to add these if we are noticing we have a sensitivity or if we've been diagnosed with celiac?
Yeah. So I personally think that.
Sorry, for the digestive enzymes, I recommend a probiotic for everybody. So
Oh, yay. Yes.
you need a probiotic, but for
Absolutely.
the digestive enzymes.
Yeah. Personally, I think everyone, when they're first diagnosed, should be on them because there's just so much damage going on at that point. And so that can really help be a bridge for a while and help you start taking advantage of your food more. But other markers that would show that you might need a digestive enzyme would be things like gas, bloating. Definitely, if you see undigested food in your stool, that is like a red flag that you need some enzyme help.
Gotcha. Awesome. Mm-hmm. And so how about stress? Let's talk about stress. How does that play a role in all of this?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because we can't address any health issue, I feel like, without addressing stress. Mm-hmm. And the mind-gut connection is so strong and so real. And stress can throw off our gut in so many ways. Mm-hmm. In fact, very stressful life events or even chronic stress can be one of the triggers of celiac disease. Mm-hmm. And stress can also worsen something called leaky gut. Mm-hmm. And leaky gut is something that underlies both gluten sensitivity and celiac disease. And it's basically where the cells in your intestinal lining come apart a little bit. It would be like if your normal intestinal lining was a fine mesh strainer, then leaky gut is like a colander where the holes are much larger and things are getting through that you didn't intend to get through. And that means there are larger particles and bacterial toxins getting into your bloodstream, and that aggravates our immune system and causes a lot more inflammation. And so when we go gluten-free and we start, we take out that trigger that's causing a lot of leakiness, we have to look at other things that may be causing leaky gut too. And stress is a really big one. So bottom line, stress should be one of those major pillars that we look at when we're thinking about healing, along with diet changes, movement, sleep. Stress is a hugely important one. And I think, most of us don't realize how stressed we even are because it's kind of our normal to be living on edge all the time. And it, in some cases, feels more familiar to us than being in a place of ease and that rest and digest state. So I really, this one has been one of the hardest for me personally to work on too. And I see it being very challenging for clients, but it's so important and it's so vital to recommit to managing our stress all the time.
For sure. I love that. And it's one of the key pillars in the hormone puzzle. So it's very
absolutely.
And so do you have any tips for us? How can we start to manage some of this stress? Like what are maybe one or two things that we can start doing today?
Yeah, I think the very best way to offset stress is to bring in more joy in your life. And so maybe I look at it as not as much like eliminating a new thing, but bringing in something that really lights you up. So maybe it's a hobby that you forgot about, or maybe it's connecting with loved ones. So I really encourage people to think about those things that really, really light a spark in you and bring you joy, and to try to make an effort to make more time for those or to incorporate them on a regular basis.
I love that. And I talk about joy a lot with my clients because I find people on the fertility journey are so used to doing things to help them along their fertility journey. They forget to add things that bring joy and things that they just love to do because. And so I love that you say that. It's so important. And the other piece of that is, as you I'm sure know, joy helps you to make oxytocin, which is a very important hormone for fertility. So it's just a win-win all around.
Yep. Can't go wrong with joy. It's the best. It's medicine.
Yeah. For sure. And so any other tips to help us manage our stress?
I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying. I think just becoming aware of maybe the state of stress that we have been living in. I think tuning more into what does our body feel like throughout the day? When do we feel tension? When do we notice our breathing fall off a little bit? And kind of just notice like what parts of our day need a little bit more TLC.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Mm-hmm. Amen to that. So talk to us a little more. I know we talked about this in the beginning, but tell us about your free gift and where we can get it.
Yeah, so this is a guide to 10 hidden sources of gluten. It dives in a little bit more to what I was mentioning before about how gluten is in a lot of weird, sneaky places. And I bet that y'all will be surprised by some of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's just a simple free guide. It's a link that you can click on. Maybe in the show notes, we can include it. And
yep.
Awesome.
Perfect. I love it. And so where can we find you? Are you on social media? What's your website?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have my website. It is gutrevivalnutrition.com. That's my practice website. And then I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle is @gluten.free.nutritionist. And yes, post lots of tips, information, silly things. It's a fun place.
I love it. And we'll have all that in the show notes, so it'll be really easy for everybody to find. And Instagram's my favorite too. That's like my playground. I love Instagram. So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Head on over there, everybody listening, and follow both of us. I love it. So any final thoughts, any words of encouragement or wisdom you want to leave us with?
I would just say that, I really believe as women that we are born with this gift of intuition. And I think when we're handed a health challenge, whether it be struggling to get pregnant or a gluten-related disorder or all of the above, I think it's such an opportunity to tune back into that and rediscover that about ourselves. Our intuition is what keeps us going and what guides us when we know something is off in our body, even when we're being told that we're fine or that there aren't answers to what's going on. And so I really encourage people to reconnect themselves into their intuition. And I know you do that too, Kayla. And I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you today and be talking to someone who's changing so many women's lives. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. I loved our conversation, and I could talk about this stuff all day.
Oh, me too.
I just am a big nerd when it comes to nutrition and women's health, so I love it.
Thank you so much again, Kayla.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to everybody who's listening. Until next time on the Hormone Puzzle Podcast, we will see you guys later. Bye. Hey, hang on just 1 second before you go. I want to make sure that you are aware of all of the amazing free resources that I have for you on my website at CoachKayla.com. From a fertility meal plan, a cycle syncing quick start guide, a holistic healing cookbook, as well as master classes, blog posts by me and some amazing experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition. So many wonderful resources that will help you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of infertility, but there just wasn't. And so that's why I decided to create all of this for you. So make sure that you go and check it out and you take advantage of this plethora of support that I have provided for you. And spoiler alert, these were some of the same tricks and the same foods that I used to get myself pregnant, not once, but twice, even after my doctors said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. Make sure you take advantage of that. And I cannot wait for you to be my next success story. So thanks, love. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in today to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode at CoachKayla.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next week.